to hear from the president on TV momentarily, so we'll save that for him. But just to react to a couple of things that have been making news. First, we should ask, because headlines just got printed about Mary Trump's book right now. Any position you have on that? She says the president is a narcissist. She's a clinical psychologist. And any response to her book coming out?
Well, he's not her patient. He's her uncle. And I know firsthand the way the president feels about his late brother, Fred Trump Jr., Ms. Trump's father. And he has been very public about his commitment to ending drug abuse in our nation because of the way he witnessed his own brother's struggles with alcoholism. He is always complimentary of his brother privately and publicly in terms of he was the heir to the family business. He was so handsome, such a force of nature, a great guy, so smart, and that the president has been very clear in private and public settings. I've seen him go like this to kids actually in a room privately, that you don't touch alcohol, drugs, tobacco. He's never had any of that because he says he saw what it did to his brother, whom he loved very much. As for books generally, obviously they're not fact-checked, nobody's under oath. I know there's always this rush to slap credibility on whoever's getting the president that day. Your job is to get the story, not get the president. So thank you for doing that. And I think family matters are family matters. And just because she's a psychologist, I know that your networks and print outlets like to cover any number of people who aren't medically trained in their medical diagnoses of the president. I'm sure that's not very facts first. So in this case, she is giving her opinion about somebody who is not her. I was just asked on TV about a quote that's attributed to Marianne Trump Barry, the sister of President Trump. And there too, since Marianne Barry I haven't seen her comment on that. I know she was at the inauguration. I know they're in touch otherwise. They're siblings. As I say, unlike many of you, I don't like to get involved in people's family business. I certainly wouldn't if I were troubled, thin-skinned, and living in a glass house like so many people these days seem to think things are their business. But we'll settle that some other time.
You're a pollster, so you're an expert on this type of topic. The president, we're 4 months after the election, is talking about the Confederate flag and sort of demanding or asking whether there's going to be an apology from the only black full-time driver in NASCAR. You know how this stuff works. Who does that win over? Who is that message capturing right now, and why? And would you advise the president to keep it up?
I know earlier today, I'm told the president gave an interview to a different outlet where he said it's a freedom of speech issue, but I think it's a good conversation for this country to have the same conversation with my own children. I personally am most concerned about the American flag and the way it is being set on fire and disparaged and disrespected, and what it stands for, because I could never look at that flag and not think of all the veterans and the active military and their families and people who literally have shed their blood so we can stand here together, particularly us women, can stand here together with our rights and all of our freedom of speech, freedom of assembly in a great democracy. So I'm most concerned about that. And I think the president made a comment, many of you are playing this 5 years ago. He thinks that maybe have the Confederate flag in the museum. I know many people feel that way. So I'll leave it at that, because I think you asked Kayleigh McEnany, I didn't watch, but a number of questions yesterday about it. You get to ask the president again today if you want to ask him about that and not safely reopen our schools, which I'd imagine, according to your own polling, is very much on people's minds. Caitlin?
Kellyanne, why is the president going to Miami on Friday for not something about coronavirus, since it's a hot spot and cases are soaring there?
Well, it doesn't mean he won't be asked about it. We are going, I'm actually the project officer for that trip, so I can explain it to you. We're visiting Southcom because from April 1st, in the briefing room, and the president and the Secretary of Defense and Ambassador O'Brien and the Commandant of the Coast Guard and others announced that they would be, Operation Surge would put the most assets ever seen for one type of counter-narcotics operation in the Western Hemisphere. Since that time, Caitlin, in just about 100 days' time, we've seen record number of seizures. So Southcom puts out press releases every week. I'm sure you're covering them. I may have missed it, but showing all the seizures they have each week of how many drugs they've been able to see. So we want to talk about that, celebrate that as a nation, because it's a big deal. We see drug overdoses on the rise because people are in extended lockdowns. We want to disrupt the supply before it gets here, and we want to make sure those cartels who are very clever and didn't let COVID-19 get in their way, that we're watching them and we're disrupting the flow. I'm sure he'll talk about, I hope he'll talk about coronavirus. If you were to ask me a question in Florida, or you ask, God bless you. If you were to ask me a question about coronavirus in Florida right now, I would answer it for you. I was in the task force meeting yesterday. I sit right behind Dr. Fauci in the task force meetings. I go to all of them.
You're aware of all the numbers and all the
Yes.
concerns on South Florida. So why is it wise for the president to go, a huge contingent of aides, Secret Service agents, why is that wise to send all of those people into a hotspot?
We have an important message for the world, and especially the drug cartels, and really the people in our different communities, Caitlin, that we are doing everything we can under tough circumstances, and having inherited from administration that did little to nothing to disrupt the flow of narcotics. We're doing everything we can, particularly knowing that most of these illicit drugs come through Mexico or from China, etc. And he's going there. I mean, he and the vice president are the two most essential workers in the country, so they are tested regularly, and the people around them are tested regularly. We are people who come to the safely reopening the schools today will have been tested before they can be near the president, the vice president, and their spouses. So we're in a little bit of a bubble down at Southcom, and we can't just stop. Just like the country can't stop what it's doing, we can't stop what we're doing. He's got to run a nation, and I do.
It's a hotspot. It's literally raging with coronavirus.
Could he do it by teleconference? Was that considered? Was there any other alternate to do it, to going to Florida with that many people, given what happened in Tulsa and what's happened elsewhere with members?
I mean, Philadelphia is a hot spot for lots of things. Did you think that it was worth Joe Biden, who is probably an at-risk patient, looks like to me, but since we're talking about non-medical people giving diagnoses, let me put mine in. Did you worry about his safety? Or, I mean, what if he got his spittle? What if what if Biden's spittle had gone beyond the teleprompters and everybody there was at risk? They're not being tested. He said he hasn't had a COVID test. So we at least know the rest of us are not infected.
We'll share that with our teams that cover him.
He said I'm worried about them. I'm worried about them because while they're throwing softball questions at Joe Biden, they don't know if they're getting infected. He said he's been tested for cognitive function, amen, but not for COVID.
But Secret Service agents go in advance, and so we already saw several test positive after Oklahoma, several tested positive before the vice president.
But I've been told how that happened, so I'm not going to reveal that.
Do you
But
think the president would go, Kellyanne, if he didn't have a fundraiser in Miami?
yes, we were always going. This is my event, meaning when I say my event, I'm the project officer because I deal with the drug crisis here at the White House, and I put in a scheduling proposal for Southcom probably before we did Operation Surge. For a while, I wanted to show. I think originally I said, hey, maybe when you're down at Mar-a-Lago, we'll go to Miami or one of our trips. And so I don't do the schedule. I work on policy here. So when that's ready, we do it. But you're just going to keep arguing about where the president should go and what he should do. He's got an event here at the White House today, and none of you are asking me a question about it, which I guarantee you, if you looked at your own polling, people are very concerned about kids getting back to school. That's a central nervous system for our nation, our nation's economy. Our parents need certainty. The kids need structure and safety. We saw the digital divide laid bare for these last couple months of the school year, where so many kids in this country could not access distance learning in a fair and equitable way. They could not competently and confidently learn and finish their school years the way they deserve to. So let's all come together on that in a very nonpartisan fashion to figure out how we can get these kids back in school safely, and daycare centers. He finally did something right. Bill de Blasio said he's going to open up the daycare centers tomorrow.
Kellyanne, as a pollster, do you see the direction of the Trump campaign focusing on cultural issues versus the economy or COVID-19 as a problem for the Trump administration?
Well, you're asking two different things there. I'm not on the campaign. I was on the campaign in 2016 when we won, and thought it was appropriate to give interviews to media and pose in magazines after we won, not before. So you can take that one. Secondly, this re-election will be about the president's progress report. So they should be talking about the progress that was made on the pandemic, meaning we surged supplies, every death is tragic, the recovery rate is very high. We have nearly 2 million people, last time I saw, who have fully recovered. I don't see anybody covering that. That's an important number too, so people understand, they have more confidence in the fact that, God forbid, if they are infected, the vast chances that they will fully recover, and certainly true of their school children. The economy, of course, will continue to be the number one issue. That's why I think it's important for everybody to remind everyone of the facts, that the president's PPP loan designations, which were passed with almost unanimous and certainly overwhelmingly bipartisan support by our Congress, has helped about 84% of small business employees. You were talking about billions, if not trillions of dollars. 30 billion has been returned. We're seeing even the hypocrites who say, oh, the president's giving it to corporate America, benefited the Democratic Party of Florida, took about $1 million. The woman that Joe Biden put in an ad in Philadelphia was criticizing the Trump administration for giving out loans to, quote, corporate America. Turns out she's got one herself. And what I learned from all of this, it just struck me last night, is that we've done a pretty good job as an administration in having people access the information they need to figure out how to apply and secure one of these loans. Because many times people say, oh, the government program was so Byzantine or so labyrinth, I couldn't even understand how nobody returned my call. Here, it looks like it was fairly easy for people to apply for and access that money. So that's great news for everyone. As I said, it was passed overwhelmingly bipartisan. Leader McConnell and others have talked about a phase 4 package to help low income. I certainly hope non-public schools will be helped, because these kids who are in those non-public schools have every right to stay in those schools, and the certainty that comes with that. Their parents have every right to exercise those options on their behalf. I think the re-election should be about a couple things. It should be about the economy. It should be about this president and everything he's done on healthcare, whether it's vaccines and ventilators, kidney health, insulin co-pays, stabilizing the Obamacare exchanges, which were a wreck when we got here, associated health plans, surprise medical billing, transparency, many different things he's been able to do in the healthcare space. It's a #1 issue to women, COVID or non-COVID. I think it should also be about patriotism and pride and forward-looking. Campaigns are about the future, not the past. And Joe Biden, if he represents any 4-letter word the most, it's PAST, past. So the president can represent the future. I'm all for that.
The Secret Service.
Nick Mulvaney said today that if the election is a referendum on President Trump, that he'll face some real headwinds.
Last thing, he said if it's a
referendum on President Trump, he'll face some real headwinds. Do you agree with that?
Well, I agree it should be a choice, and every election is a choice. And I will just recount to you, as much as I can, a private conversation I had with Mr. Trump on August 12th, 2016, when just the two of us in the room, and he asked me to be his campaign manager. I said, currently the election is about you, and if it's about you, you can win, but it'll be more difficult. If it's about your opponent, whose name I don't say anymore, lest I be accused of still mentioning her name, the one who you guys said would win and lost, her. If it's about her, or if it's a choice between the two of you, you absolutely will win, because people already think certain things about her. ABC News Washington Post poll, I'm looking for anyone, Washington Post poll, take a picture of it, said that 62% of Americans thought she was neither honest nor trustworthy. I mean, that was a really stinging statistic. So elections are choices. It's not just are you for Trump or non-Trump, because there is no non-Trump. The person's name is Joe Biden, and he too has a record and a lot of really creepy statements, actions for sure, but statements that he's made in the past that make me very uncomfortable, certainly as a mother, but as a person who breathes air and exercises brain capacity. It makes me very uncomfortable that he would look at certain other Americans the way he apparently has in the past. And so it's a choice between the two of them. He has said he will undo the Trump tax cuts immediately. That would slap on about $1,200 per household in taxes, or at least that's what they saved on average. We're going to get rid of what? The child care tax credit at a time when people really need it. You raise taxes on corporate America and on businesses again, you're going to affect the entire economy, because this president reduced the corporate tax rate from 35% highest in the developed world to 21%, which is below the 23% average. And look what happened. Millions and millions of Americans got bonuses and or raises, many more jobs created. Even during this pandemic recovery, the economic recovery, we've created, 7.5 million jobs in 2 months. May and June were both blockbuster monster jobs reports. So that will all get undone under Joe Biden, who should also be asked to explain what the heck happened with Biden's false promise, you can keep your plan, keep your doctor, quote, everybody will have health insurance. That is a big, fat lie, and one that matters to people. They didn't have health insurance. Millions of people still don't. So why would we go backwards, backwards, backwards? And Joe Biden just seems to, he's not standing up for law enforcement, he's not standing up for the flag, he's not standing up for patriotism. It's not very inspirational. And frankly, they're not even good at this. He's putting a woman in an ad disparaging the PPP loan program, who got one herself.
You said that.
If Trump is still down at the polls, though, would you ever consider going back and working on the campaign, since you sort of turned it around and got him to win the first time around?
So I'm where the president would like me to be, and he's made that very clear. So I do think that there are certain analogies to 2016 that are still true. The electoral map is still the electoral map, and I was very public about where we were going and why. You can pull the tape. I know many people thought he was going to win, and they said so starting November 9th at about 3:30 a.m., but I can't find their texts or their emails or their tapes. I have a living, breathing video catalog, and I can show you on your network a lot, especially that morning show, day after day after day. Here's why we're going back to Pennsylvania. Isn't it Republican Fool's Gold, Kellyanne? Yes, it has been. We're going to do, Mitt Romney lost to 6 collar counties around Philadelphia. We'll probably lose them too, just not as badly. Did you say you lose them? Yes, we'll probably lose them not as badly. That was true, except for Chester County. He did about a point better than us, but that will run up the totals in the rest of the state. Some of that's true. It's still true. Pennsylvania still has 20 electoral votes, but they don't have this time as a Republican governor, and they don't have early vote. They now have early voting, which they didn't have last time. So some things are different, but many things are still the same. I'd say it's better for President Trump in that he's not just promising things, he's proven that he's been a voice and an actor for the forgotten man or forgotten woman. And he should be talking about that. I think his convention will showcase actual people who have been helped. But for Donald Trump being president, Mike Pence being vice president, these people would still be languishing in jail, would still be languishing on drugs, would not have a job, would not have been able to purchase their first home, would not have been returned to American soil from some prison, or some detention, some prison abroad. He's brought home so many hostages and detainees on his watch, for example. So there are many examples. And then, of course, taking Joe Biden on and reminding people that we've never seen. I just saw another poll or a story about, it was in the mainstream media outlet, about how angry many women, suburban women are at China. You betcha, because they've been paying attention for 4 months as to what's going on and who caused it. And so us being able to remind people why that is and how that happened, and holding China accountable and the WHO accountable for the spread of a virus they said wasn't spreading, couldn't be transmitted human to human. Whoa. And wasn't serious while they were locking down their own country, locking down Wuhan.
You've been making that point for quite a while now, and yet the president is still behind Joe Biden in the polls, in some national polls by double digits.
Yeah, the national polls don't mean as much to me. I think they're great for trends.
Yeah.
So let me just tell you, and as a pollster, I will tell you, when I became campaign manager, we never did a single national poll, ever, because it would have been a colossal waste of money that we didn't have. We did a ton of statewide polls, because you don't win or lose the election based on national polls, and you don't win the popular vote, and you don't win or lose based on electability, which is a fiction. You win on the Electoral College. And that's what we focus on, and I'm sure that's what they're focusing on as well. So these state polls are really important. I said last week, I'll say again, I think Trump and Biden are pretty much where I would expect them to be right now in most of the state polls, which is the ones that have good methodology, by the way. Let me caveat that, which is that they're both under 50% and they're within striking distance of each other, give or take a few points. So that doesn't surprise me at all, because, again, part of that private conversation, August 12, 2016, and then the strategy, but I was very public about it. I don't know what everybody's hiding these days, very public about it, was, hey, we're going to go into states that Obama-Biden won twice with over 50% of the vote, where Hillary has never been at 50% and stayed there in a poll for any, polling for an appreciable amount of time. And third, where a Republican has been elected statewide to Senate and or governor during the President Obama years, meaning they're not allergic to Republicans. In fact, when they need a chief executive and or a senator, they voted Republican. So we know they'll do that. And we focused on those states. And even some that we didn't win. We focused on New Hampshire and Colorado and New Mexico and Nevada, but we sure the heck focused on Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Iowa, Ohio, North Carolina, Florida, Pennsylvania. So I don't think it's a big mystery how to win. Maybe some of the other stuff is a mystery, but I don't think it's a big mystery how to win. And I think most of the campaign is still ahead of us. I would remind you, at this point in 2016, it was the day after Jim Comey's press conference that he shouldn't have had press avail, making an announcement that Rod Rosenstein and Loretta Lynch and others clearly felt was none of his business to talk about the Department of Justice not charging Hillary Clinton for her email scandalabra. And he made that announcement, and I'm sure I was on the campaign by that time as a pollster and senior advisor. I remember it very clearly, watching that press avail with a bunch of other staffers at the campaign. We had a meeting that day about who to pick for VP, so it's early. It's early. There will be debates, and we'll continue to. And I just think, for me, for COVID-19, we're always battling a dual medical and financial crises, and we're watching both and trying to help people do both. With these extended lockdowns, I just had a call with my opioid cabinet. It is downright saddening what's happened in these extended lockdowns. We had drug overdoses up 18% in April, I think it was, no, March, but by May it was 42%. So the longer people go, economically desperate, socially isolated, alone with their drugs, it's very, very hard for many people to do that. And I don't blame them. We have to help them. So thank you. We'll see you at 3 o'clock.
Thank you.
Sorry?
Really quickly on today's event.
Yay!
And the head of the National Education Association testified on the Hill today that they're worried about overcrowding in classrooms and
Well, I didn't see the testimony. I know that they always endorse, I think they've already endorsed Joe Biden. That's fine. They can do that, even though he's not for kids, for sure, because he's against school choice and charter schools and opportunity scholarships and the current legislation making its way through the Congress, which should have unanimous support, called Education Freedom Scholarships. That aside, he'll have to explain that. I'm sure you'll ask Biden that. That aside, I think the way you safely distance kids is an issue. I've been working with the task force as the CDC is coming up with safely reopening schools. I've actually talked to principals and superintendents myself just to get an idea what different districts are doing. I know in some cases that they are saying maybe kids will have to eat lunch at their desk, so no cafeteria services, maybe no buses, which is another whole, I know, issue for many people. No parents allowed in the schools since you're older and more at risk. No more cupcake parties, no more reading to the kids. So things will feel differently, maybe no field trips. So I think they're all working that out to figure out the way that you can safely reopen and focus on what we need to focus on, which is the kids getting their education. I've talked to a couple principals who said, high school principals actually, have said, look, maybe what we'll have to do is put A through L kids' last names in school the full week, and then the next week they're at home learning online, and then reverse it. So how that impacts the parents who have to go to work every week, we'll have to see. But I'm very happy to see a lot of these education groups, UNICEF itself, saying, please get these kids back in school. It's important, because those are important voices also. And on this, we really should have nonpartisan agreement. And look, not every state and not every school district is created equally. I'm in there when Dr. Birx in the task force meetings, including yesterday, are showing us that 55% of new cases are in 4 states, and not everywhere in the states. So you've got a big surge in some metro areas where bars were open, and you've got a place 500 miles from there in the same state that has very few cases. So those districts, I think, will have to decide for themselves also, and obviously the governor. So, but thank you for that, and I think it's a very important event this afternoon. Pardon me?
Do you think that the plan that the governor put out in Florida is too aggressive?
I'm not familiar enough with it to say. I don't know that.
In that same vein, you had Chuck Grassley and Laura Alexander say that they're skipping the convention. Do you expect more of those sorts of decisions as the convention gets?
Well, they may, but let's. I'm sorry, Carol. Let's note why they're skipping the convention. They're skipping the convention because Chuck Grassley is 80 years old. It looks healthy to me. I know he goes to bed at 9 o'clock every night famously. I'm jealous, but I guess that's the secret. It's a part of his health portfolio, but he knows he's an at-risk individual just by his age and traveling. So I assume that's what he means. You can ask him. I have the utmost respect for Chairman Grassley. Yeah, that makes sense to me, but that's not school children. That's their grandparents or great-grandparents. So we really have to not do this one-size-fits-all. And I will tell you that I said in the task force meeting, whenever it was at HHS, maybe 11 days ago or so, I said there what I've said publicly since, which is, hey, do we want to open up bars now? Do we want to open up schools in a month or two from now? I know, let's open up schools in a month or two from now. And I think many people would agree with that if opening the bars has helped slow down reopening of some of those more essential institutions like schools. I think that's incredibly important. I mean, my kids are lucky, they get to be online and learning, but not every kid has that privilege.
My question was more whether you think that more Republicans will say they're not going to the convention out of concerns about growth.
Probably, and I'll tell you why. I think if I obviously aren't at the campaign or in charge of the rallies, but it was very clear that in Tulsa, many people who support President Trump will crawl across broken glass for him, are going to vote for him, are going to get other people to vote for him, or all maggot out all the time. Walter Schaub, calm down. That they don't want to go to a rally. They're afraid because for them it's high risk, low reward, meaning they don't need to go to a rally to know that they support the president. So it's many of his supporters that you're not going to see anymore. Many of his supporters are not going to go to rallies. Maybe if they're outdoor, sure. But also, people have come this far. They've followed the rules. They've stayed inside. And they, I mean, really at-risk people. I should make very clear. At-risk people are elderly population, people with underlying conditions. If you live in a long-term facility or nursing home, if you lived in a prison, if you've been in some housing situations which are more dense, then if you've been in certain hotspots, if you've been at a bar or a restaurant that ended up having infections, etc., then you're at greater risk. And I think those people will make decisions for themselves. I think the question for Chairman Grassley is, do you support the renomination and re-election of President Trump? Because I know, believe me, a lot of Republicans didn't go to his convention in 2016, And they're the first person saying, can he retweet this? Can I come to the White House? Can I get a round of golf? Can I get an appointment in the administration? So there are all different reasons why people don't go to conventions. I think this one will be health focused for most of those people, and they have every right to feel that way, and we respect that. That has nothing to do with their support of the president and his agenda.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. You said the agents got sick for a reason?
All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us here at Golden State Times. If you like the coverage of Kellyanne Conway's press gaggle outside of the White House, then make sure you guys click that subscribe button and that notification bell. And also don't forget to click the thumbs up button. That lets YouTube know that you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to help out Golden State Times, share this stream on Facebook and Twitter and Gab and Reddit and Parler and all of those social media sites. If you're also part of the groups on Facebook, make sure you share this video on there too. If you're part of the groups on Reddit and Parler and stuff, then make sure you share it on there too. Thank you so much for being the best part of Golden State Times, and we hope that you guys join us on the next one. If you guys missed President Trump's speech on reopening schools at the White House that we live streamed earlier today, it should be coming up on your screen. I'll also pin it to the top of the comments below. Make sure you go and check it out, and also give it a thumbs up and share it on social media. Once again, folks, thank you so much for being the best part of Golden State Times. If you just subscribed this very second, here, I'll give you a second. All right, I hope you guys subscribed. Welcome to the family.